Hello, welcome to this CoolLED video tutorial. In this video we will show you how to set up the pE-6501-8 trigger box with the pE-800 within µManager. The pE-6501-8 allows triggering control of all the 8 LEDs in the pE-800 using a single cable connecting the two together. Additionally, a single BNC output allows control of a PT-100 for bright field imaging if required. In this video we will go through both setups with and without the PT-100. But firstly, we'll set up the unaccompanied pE-800. Once the pE-800 is connected to the pE-6501-8, turn on the light source and plug in both USB cables. The one connecting the pE-6501-8 to the computer, which allows for triggering capabilities, and the one directly from the pE-800 to the computer, which allows for the intensities to be adjusted via the LightBridge software. When the USB is plugged in, the computer will attempt to locate a driver file, and a pop-up like this will appear if one is present. If no compatible NI driver file has been previously used, a pop-up may be displayed stating there's no driver found. To download the driver for the pE-6501-8, head to the NI website. It's ni.com, and under NI driver downloads, go to NIDAX MX. From here, select the latest version and download the file. Once downloaded, run the file and run through the steps in the setup and install the program. This takes several minutes to install and your computer will require restarting once completed. If not already done so, µManager now needs to be downloaded and installed. This can be downloaded from micromanager.org. We suggest downloading the latest nightly build. Make sure you download either the 32-bit or the 64-bit, depending on which version matches your computer. Run the application once downloaded, then run through the steps outlined in the µManager setup until it's completed. To operate the LEDs, the LightBridge software can be opened. This should accompany the pE-800 on a memory stick or can be downloaded from the CoolLED website. The LightBridge software can adjust the individual intensities of the LEDs when not being triggered by µManager, and can also be set for when they are triggered by µManager by the pE-6501-8. Once µManager and LightBridge are both ready and have been downloaded, they can both be opened. Within µManager, we're going to go to Tools, and from here, go to Hardware Configuration Wizard. Choose whether to modify an existing configuration or create a new one. This demo, I'm going to create a new one. This step is now going to install the pE-6501-8 within the configuration. So scroll down until NI100X is found. If it's not here, it might be further down under Unavailable Devices, but this should only be here if the driver hasn't been installed correctly. Double-click on Digital I/O. In this dialog box, we're going to make a few changes. Firstly, you can change the label name. I'm going to call this pE-800. We now need to change a couple of the values here. So firstly, under Auto Detected Output Port, we can see a few options for the value. This is corresponding to the device and port of our pE-6501-8. This can be determined within the NI software. Within my setup, it is device 1, port 1. Below, under Property I/O channel, we're going to change the value to match that of the above. So in my case, dev1/port 1. When ready, click OK. And you'll see under Install Devices, the pE-800 is now available. In this demo, we're going to use a demo camera just for ease of use. But if you have your own camera, please set up this now as well. Once ready, we can click through to the end and create a new configuration file. In this case, I'm going to call mine pE-800. Once set up, the pE-800 with the pE-6501-8 is now ready to use. This section of the video will show some basic functionality of the pE-6501-8. To set up the channels from the pE-800, select the plus next to Group and select pE-800 label. Name the group name something sensible, like pE-800, and then click OK. OK. This will allow control of the 8 individual LEDs from the pE-800, as well as a combination of the 8 LEDs. To select individual LEDs, presets can now be made or edited. As default, there are 256 different numbers already present. These can be edited in terms of name or deleted. And these are actually numbered in binary. So the first LED, either 365 or the 400 nanometer, depending on if you're using an SB or MB version of the pE-800, is tied to preset 1. The second LED, the 435 nanometer, preset 2. The 470 nanometer, 4. 500 nanometer, 8. 550, 16. The 580 nanometer is 32. The 635 nanometer, 64. And the 740 nanometer is 128. 0 triggers none of the LEDs, so it can be labelled as off, and 255 triggers them all on. The rest of the numbers combine different LEDs in various ways. So if you want the 365 and the 435 nanometer, for example, you can select preset 3. As there are 256 different options here, it can be quite messy to begin with, so the ones that aren't needed can be deleted if wanted. If you continue to use the same configuration within µManager, they should all just need to be adjusted once, saved, and then will be easier to work with going forward. Additional settings can be added if required in the future as well by selecting the plus. In my setup, I'm going to label 3 LEDs to begin with. These can be labelled by wavelength or by stain if it's easier. So here, we're going to do preset 1, which is DAPI. Then we're going to rename preset 4 as the 470 nanometer LED, which is going to be FITSI in my setup. As you can see, it takes a bit of time to find them. And then we're going to do preset 16, which is the 550 nanometer, which is used for TRITSI. And OK. As you can see, once done, it's much easier to find them. Do this with as many LEDs as needed, and when selected, the Lightbridge software can be used to adjust the intensities of these LEDs before the experiment is begun. It's important to note the pE-6501-8 only controls the on and off functionality of the pE-800, so the intensity must be set on the Lightbridge software before undertaking any experiments. It's now possible to create an experiment within µManager. So open multi-dimensional acquisition. Here you can change the number of images taken, the interval, as well as other parameters. In channels, you can select the channel group that we've just created, pE-800. By selecting new, we can input the preset settings we've added or changed. Add as many channels as required. In this case, I'm going to do 3. So I'm going to do DAPI, FITSI, and TRITSI. When all the settings have been adjusted to your requirements, such as the exposure and any skipped frames, the black and white image will appear if the demo camera has been used once we hit Acquire. Otherwise, your images should start appearing. You can now either save the images once the experiment is finished, when they'll be ready to analyze and interpret. In this next section, I'll demonstrate how to create a setup where a pE-800 and a PT100 for transmitted applications can be used while connected to the pE-6501-8. To connect the PT100 to the pE-6501-8, the single BNC connection on the back of the PT100 control pod can be connected to the BNC on the pE-6501-8. Within µManager in the software to set up, we're going to again go to Tools, Hardware Configuration Wizard. And from here, I'm going to edit it, and again scroll down to NI100X and select Digital I/O. Again, we can change the label, this time to PT100, and then we're going to change the auto-detected output port. Again, it could be on different devices or different ports, but on my system it is dev1/port2. Underneath, an I/O channel, Again, make sure it matches up with that above. When done, click OK. Here you can now see the pE-800 and the pT-100 are both under installed devices. Again, click through to the very end where you can overwrite or create a new configuration file. To set up a group, there are now two options you'll need, one to control the pE-800 and one to control the pT-100. Here we can either edit this group or we can create a new one. I'm going to create a new one. Again, we're going to select pE-800 label to control the pE-800, and below we should be able to see pT-100 label to control the pT-100. Again, call your group name something sensible and click OK. Here we can see a pop-up has appeared now. This is asking us to create our first preset. Here we can see the two different labels for the pE-800 and the pT-100 and the preset values associated with them. Again, you get 256 channels or presets for the pE-800 and off is 0. Get the same for the pT-100, but all we need is off and on for the pT-100, where 0 is off and 1 refers to on. So with the pE-800 off and the pT-100 on, we can label this something like bright field and OK. Again, to create presets, it's exactly the same as before. So preset name, for example, if we want DAPI, we want to turn off the bright field and have just channel 1 on for DAPI. You can see the presets here are only the ones we've made now. It's got rid of all the single ones which we had previously for just the pE-800, so it looks a little bit cleaner. Again, we can put in FITC, and we can add in TRITC as well. Using preset value 16. And OK. Do this with as many LEDs as is needed, and when selected, again the Lightbridge software can be used to adjust the intensities of the pE-800 LEDs before any experiment begins. A control pod of the pT-100 can then be used to adjust the intensity of this separately. It's important to note that pE-6501-8 only controls the on and off functionality of the pE-800 and the pT-100, so the intensity must be set on the Lightbridge and pod before undertaking any experiments. It's now possible to create an experiment within µManager using bright field and fluorescence from both the pT-100 and the pE-800. Here we can open multidimensional acquisition, and again you can change the number of images taken, the intervals and other parameters. In channels you can see the channel group we created, again pE-800. By selecting new, we can start adding in the presets that we've just made. In this case I'm going to do 4. First one is going to be our bright field, just for the pT-100. Then we have the DAPI, FITC and TRITC coming from the pE-800. Here, once you've changed your parameters such as exposure and frames skipped, you can click Acquire when you're ready to undertake the experiment. You should see the pT-100 triggering on, as well as the LEDs from fluorescence from the pE-800, depending on how much you've set your intensity to. Once the experiment is completed, you can either discard or save your images from the experiment, which are ready to analyze and interpret. Thank you for watching this CoolLED tutorial video.